I could not be prouder of the fact that Sacramento has become one of the largest destination points for refugees, because this is who we are. When people are hurting, when people are suffering, we don't turn our backs. We open our doors.
Opening Doors enriches communities by supporting refugees, immigrants, and survivors of trafficking on their path to stability, self-sufficiency, and belonging. And that order is intentional. So for stability, that's meeting one's basic needs, right? Without a safe place to sleep, without adequate permanent housing, you can never advance to the next steps in your journey.
With the unaffordability of rents combined with just the high cost of living, there's going to be a requirement of multiple approaches to make affordable housing something that everybody can enjoy and access here in California.
Because there's enough room, we just don't have enough housing. There was already a crisis issue. The pandemic has really exacerbated it. And now that people are kind of moving out of San Francisco and the greater Bay Area that are in tech specifically or have those higher paying jobs, they're coming into our region. And so they're competing.
We're in the midst of a real economic renaissance. We're attracting more industry, creating more new jobs, more opportunity for people. And yet, we have one major challenge, and that is the lack of affordable housing for people. It's basic economics. When you don't have enough supply, the prices rise.
There's not enough inventory for the need that community members have for affordable housing. It's just not built fast enough. And the other thing is really the market consolidation, where you have a lot of investors coming in buying even single family homes. And so we're now really realizing how vulnerable people are to becoming homeless.
We know how to get people off the streets once they're on the streets. We need to focus just as much or more on preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place. That's about housing. That's about people living in very fragile states with a significant amount of insecurity around their jobs, around housing, around being able to basically afford the most essential things of life.
Traditionally, we might say that affordable housing should be 30% of people's income. Here in Sacramento, that's not possible. We are looking at a problem that will take years, if not decades, to really solve. Sacramento needs tens of thousands of rental units to meet the needs of its low income and working class community members.
That's daunting. And yet it's achievable to reduce that gap and maybe even eliminate it if we move to a public policy in this city, in this state, and in this country, where housing is not only a human right, it becomes a legal right. We can change this.
When I think about stability and what that means for vulnerable populations, which includes refugees and immigrants and survivors of trafficking, the first thing that they need in order to get that sense of stability is housing. We're pushing out the folks who help support our economy. We're missing out on an opportunity to, enrich our communities with food, with culture, with so many things.
Sacramento has been home to different refugee communities going back decades. So while the refugees need support when they first arrive and get set on that path to stability, self-sufficiency, and belonging, we know that over time, we all benefit from the contributions of refugees here in our community. Over time, they end up contributing more in taxes paid than in any public benefits that they use. We see that refugees and immigrants actually start businesses at higher rates than the US-born population. These families are seeking safety for themselves, they're seeking safety for their loved ones, they're seeking safety for their kids. So when we see large numbers of, for example, Afghan evacuees coming to the US as refugees after the US pulled out of Afghanistan, many of them wanted to come to Sacramento.
We have one of the largest Afghan communities here in the United States in Sacramento. Beyond being resettled close to your family, you're also resettling in a community that understands you, that has the different foods that you love to buy at this market, and that's really, really big to make somebody feel like, okay, I belong here, I can make home here.
The Afghan community that's been established here and the businesses that we have already over here makes it easier for them to just start their life here.
That community is going to enable them to get back on their feet, heal from their trauma, and start contributing to their new communities. And yet, the biggest barrier to refugee resettlement in this area is our housing market. We provide 90 days of case management services, and we do have some initial funding available to help families secure their permanent apartment. So that might mean that we can help with the first month rent or with the deposit, but they are ultimately going to have to be able to pay their own rent, and that's what's really challenging.
They just flee their country, they have nothing. There are a lot of clients that actually start their life from bare minimum, from zero. So these refugees that arrives here with minimum of documents, and by the time we get their documents translated, it takes a long time. They need to provide for their family, so pretty much any job they get offered to, they accept. So minimum wage jobs. Often they work 7 days a week, and most of these jobs are out of Sacramento, so they don't even see their children for 3-4 days.
And we're also seeing that there are increasingly other barriers that are set up as well. Of course, when refugees are first coming to the country, they don't have a credit history, they don't have a rental history.
When so many people are trying to find suitable, affordable housing, when you're a landlord and you're looking at somebody who, has stable income versus somebody who you might be taking a chance on, that becomes really challenging. And we were already in a really dire housing situation. If we can't find permanent housing for our clients, they can't get on their path towards stability. We can't even think about self-sufficiency at that point because we're still trying to meet their basic needs.
This housing piece just has these additional impacts on every other step in the process. We're seeing that there are delays in getting kids enrolled in school. We're seeing that there are delays in getting mom and dad searching for work, because how do you fill out that job application if your permanent address isn't secure yet?
It makes a difference on how you are mentally, physically, emotionally. So it's a double burden when you are fleeing with nothing and then you come to a place that has more resources than most countries on earth, and then you struggle probably even more. It hurts me that people don't have that basic need that they should have.
We alone cannot solve the housing crisis in California, but we were looking for every innovation we could that could create a little more space for just one more family, one more refugee. We would not have been able to welcome the historic numbers of Afghan refugees without the support of the Afghan community. They stepped up, they let their friends and loved ones stay with them for a period of weeks while we secured permanent housing.
We can't really do the work of resettlement without our community of volunteers because we need all hands on deck. We finally found a landlord who was willing to take a chance on us, and Opening Doors signed a master lease for a 4-bedroom home where we furnished it with the support of all of our volunteers. And so we ended up calling it Welcome House. And whenever we needed a place for our clients to stay, even temporarily, at least we knew we could put them somewhere where they felt like they could feel at home. I think another creative solution that we thought about is like, you know what, let's just put some of our own resources behind this and see if we can purchase an apartment building. And lo and behold, here we are with a new apartment building where we can house our clients who need it and at an affordable rate.
We're planning on prioritizing tenant selection by focusing on families that are headed by single parents and by focusing on families that have someone with a pretty serious medical condition. We know that this is really just a drop in the bucket compared to the thousands of refugees who have come to Sacramento, but at least for those families, we're really changing their lives.
More innovative solutions like this could be a way to help fix this housing crisis. until we can get to that point where there's affordable housing for everyone.
Home is really the sanctuary for people, no matter how big or small it is. We have to work together to really solve this, and I think it's critically important when we advocate in these spaces, when we go for policy changes, that we're clear it's for everyone.
It puts even more of the right kind of pressure on all of us to make affordable housing the priority in our community, because we have so many people who are coming to Sacramento because they've been victimized by the governments and the regimes from where they fled. It's our obligation to find a way, and we can do it.
When we look at the scope and the scale of the problem, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed by how much needs to be done. But it's important to remember that every additional unit of affordable housing is one more family that's secure in our community.
Imagine multiplying that across our Sacramento community, California community. Imagine how many more people can experience that pathway to permanent housing. And I think that's why we should call attention to some of these projects that we've done, because they're working and maybe it can help inspire other people to do the same.